They said she could not survive an industry controlled by one powerful company for more than 80 years. But they underestimated her. From a small family business in Naivasha, she built a billion-shilling brewery, challenged Kenya's 83-year-old beer monopoly.
That we broke a monopoly that was there in the liquor market,
and forced an entire industry to take notice. In this video, we'll explore how Tabitha Karanja grew Keroche from a small business into a major brewing company and the challenges she faced along the way, and 5 powerful lessons African entrepreneurs can learn from her inspiring journey. This is a story of a woman who challenged the impossible. This is the story of Kenya's Iron Lady, Tabitha Karanja. Hello and how are you? Welcome to Africa Profit Stories. My name is Tino Jaugi. Tabitha Mukami Karanja was born in 1964, shortly after Kenya gained independence. At the time, Kenya was still building its economy. Manufacturing was limited. Business finance was difficult to access. Many major industries were controlled by powerful local companies and multinational corporates. For a woman, the barriers were even greater. So at the time, very few Kenyan women had businesses. Very few operated factories. The idea that a woman from rural Kenya could one day build a brewery capable of challenging established companies would have sounded almost impossible. Tabitha grew up near Kijabe in central Kenya. She was the eldest child in a large family. Being the oldest often brings responsibilities. You help care for younger siblings. You learn discipline. You understand that resources are limited. And you become someone whom other people depend on. These lessons do not appear on a certificate, but can prepare a person for a leadership role. After completing her studies, Tabitha found employment as an accounting clerk in Kenya Ministry of Tourism. It may have looked like an ordinary government job, but it taught her important financial skills. She learned bookkeeping, administration, record keeping, and the importance of accounting for every shilling. Many entrepreneurs love talking about vision, but businesses rarely collapse because their founder cannot dream. They often collapse because their founders do not understand money. Revenue is not profit, and profit is not cash. And a company can appear successful while struggling to pay its bills. During this period, Tabitha met Joseph Karanja. Their marriage eventually became both a personal and a business partnership. Joseph operated a hardware shop in Naivasha. The shop provided the family with an income, and it became their first business school. It taught them about customers, suppliers, inventory, pricing, negotiations, and cash flow. The business was stable, and for many families, this was supposed to be enough. But for the Karanjas, they believed that there was something more out of this. They wanted to move from retail to manufacturing. Retailers sell products made by other people. Manufacturers create their own products and control more of the value chain. However, manufacturing is also risky. Machinery must be purchased before products are sold. Employees must be paid before customers arrive. Factories must meet government standards, and one production mistake can destroy the entire batch. The Karanjas understood danger, but they believe manufacturing can help them build something much larger than a hardware shop. The next question was simple: what would they manufacture? Their answer surprised almost everyone: alcoholic beverages.
so I took over and I worked in that hardware, I think, for those years. And then I was there, the time I discovered everything we were selling was being manufactured. So I felt, even me, I want to do manufacturing, but I didn't know what I wanted to manufacture. And while we were at it, we started to do a bit of research and see. And funny enough, we found in the liquor market, there was a gap in the liquor market. And there was only one brewery in the country. And those who could not afford that were also left to drink whatever is available in their villages and all that. So we said, why don't we come up with a product that is affordable, that is hygienically produced, and that meets international standard. And at the time we came with a fortified wine.
To understand their decision, we need to understand Kenya's alcohol market during the 90s. Beer dominated the formal market. Established brands already had strong relationships with hotels, bars, shops, and distributors. Wine was often expensive. Imported spirits were beyond the reach of many ordinary consumers. At the lower end of the market, some people relied on traditional or informal produced alcoholic drinks. The quality of those products varied widely. The Karanjas saw this and believed that there was a gap. They saw customers who wanted affordable, legally manufactured, and consistently produced beverages. So instead of attacking the strongest company with an identical product, they did something else. They focused on customers who were being overlooked. This was a smart strategy. Large companies usually ignore people whom they consider too poor, too difficult to reach, or too small to matter. But those ignored customers can become a foundation of a challenger. In 1997, Tabitha and Joseph established Keroche Industries. According to the company's early history, they began with approximately 5 employees and around 500,000 shillings. For a manufacturing company with a limited capital, every shilling mattered. Every purchase had to be justified, and every mistake could threaten the business. Their first major product was fortified wine. Why not beer? Because beer was far more expensive to produce. A brewery required tanks, laboratories, water treatment, packaging equipment, technical workers, and a significant working capital. So fortified wine allowed the Karanja to start at a smaller scale. It gave them a chance to produce, generate revenue, and learn how manufacturing worked. They understood an important principle. You do not always begin with your final dream. Sometimes you begin with a product that can finance that dream. The wine business became Keroche's manufacturing school. The founders learned how to control quality, manage workers, purchase raw materials, meet government requirements, and convince retailers to stock an unknown brand. Producing the bottles was only half of the battle. Keroche still needed customers. Retailers were cautious. Shelf space was limited. An unknown product represented a risk. Keroche therefore had to persuade shop owners, bar operators, and distributors to take a chance on them. That required persistence, competitive prices, reliable delivery, and consistent quality. One retailer agreed, then another. One customer tried the product. Some returned and bought it again. This is how most companies grow. Not through one magical moment, but through hundreds of small victories. As profits arrived, the Karanjas invested much of the money. Profits became machinery, delivery vehicles, employees, and a larger production facility. But fortified wine could only take Keroche so far. If a company wanted to become a national beverage producer, it would eventually have to enter Kenya's largest alcohol category, beer. That decision would transform Keroche. It would also place the company directly against one of East Africa's most powerful businesses. By the early 2000s, Keroche had products, customers, and manufacturing experience, so the safe decision would have been to remain in the wine and spirits industry. Instead, Tabitha and Joseph decided to build a brewery. This was not simply another product launch. Beer would place Keroche inside one of Kenya's most competitive markets. The company would be challenging businesses with more money, powerful brands, national distribution, and customers who had trusted their products for generations. But beer also offered scale. Success could transform Keroche from a small manufacturer into a major industrial company. The problem was that beer is difficult to manufacture consistently. Water quality must be controlled. Ingredients must meet strict standards. Temperatures must remain stable. Fermentation takes time. Equipment must remain clean. And the taste must remain consistent from one bottle to another. One poor batch can destroy a customer's trust. Keroche needed brewers, engineers, laboratories, quality control, water treatment, packaging equipment, and trained workers. The financial cost of this was enormous. Brewing tanks were very expensive. Bottling lines were expensive. Warehouse and delivery vehicles were expensive. And all this had to be purchased before the company knew whether customers would accept the beer. The Karanjas faced a frightening question. What if customers rejected it? What if retailers refused to stock it? What if the equipment failed? What if the company could not just repay its loans back? All these questions did not disappear. The founders simply refused to allow fear to make a decision for them. So in 2008, Keroche entered the mainstream beer market with Summit Lager. The launch was more than an introduction for a new drink. It was more of a declaration. Keroche wanted to compete at the center of the industry. Some Kenyans celebrated the emergence of a local-owned brewery. Others were skeptical. Could Keroche produce beer consistently? Could it persuade customers to change brands? And could it distribute its beers across the country? The final question was critical. Entrepreneurs often focus too much on the product, but products do not build companies themselves. Distribution does. A brilliant product hidden inside a warehouse is almost no value. Retailers must also be willing to stock it, and distributors must deliver it consistently. Keroche could build one brewery, but its beer needed to reach thousands of shops, bars, hotels, and supermarkets. Every new area requires trucks, salespeople, retailers, marketing, and working capital. Keroche also needed to build trust. Consumers do not choose beverage based on ingredients. They choose names they can recognize. They choose brands they can remember, and products their friends already drink. Over time, Keroche invested billions of shillings in expansion. The factory grew, production increased, more employees were hired, but growth also created pressure. A larger factory required larger skills. More workers created larger salary obligations. More machinery created higher maintenance costs. More borrowing created larger repayments. Growth made Keroche stronger, but it also made the company more vulnerable. And soon its greatest battle was coming. Alcohol manufacturers also face excessive duty. A disagreement over how a product is classified can create a tax demand worth millions or even billions of shillings. Over the years, Keroche became involved in major disputes with the Kenyan Revenue Authority, known as the KRA. The KRA argued that Keroche owned a substantial amount of unpaid tax. Keroche challenged several assessments and maintained that some calculations or enforcement decisions were incorrect. It is important to stay balanced here. A tax assessment represents the amount the authority believes is owed. It does not automatically prove deliberate wrongdoing. Companies have the right to challenge assessments. At the same time, tax authorities have a responsibility to collect revenue they believe is legally due. To an ordinary viewer, this may sound like a disagreement between two accountants. At different times, Keroche operations were disrupted, production stopped, factory gates closed. The company warned that shutdowns threatened jobs and reduced its ability to generate revenues. Keroche urged that keeping the factory open would help it pay employees and meet its obligations. The KRA maintained that it was enforcing Kenyan laws. The dispute divided public opinion. Supporters of Keroche urged that Kenya needed to protect local manufacturers. Others urged that local ownership could not exempt company from paying taxes. Both arguments raised difficult questions. Governments need taxes to finance hospitals, schools, and roads. But governments also need factories to be open so that people maintain their jobs and expand the tax base. But governments also need factories. A government that fails to collect taxes becomes weak. But a tax system that destroys productive companies may eventually have fewer businesses left to tax. For Tabitha, the crisis changed the meaning of leadership. When business is growing, the founder focuses on opportunity. During a crisis, the founder focuses on survival. Her experience with taxation and regulation eventually influenced her next move. In 2022, Tabitha contested for a position of a senator for Nakuru country and won. So there you have it. The woman who had spent years challenging the government's decisions from outside had now entered the government itself. After approximately 25 years leading Keroche, Tabitha announced in 2023 that she was stepping down as the chief executive. She described the decision as passing leadership to a newer generation. But her departure did not remove the company's challenges. Keroche still needed working capital, reliable production, strong distribution, professional management, and control its financial and legal obligation. This raised one of the biggest questions facing African family businesses. Can the company survive without the founder? Many businesses depend on one open person. Many businesses are depending on one open person. The founder controls the consumers, suppliers, money, and every important decision. This may work during the early years, but a real institution must eventually become larger than the person who created it. Keroche's future will depend on whether it can transform its founder's courage into strong systems. Tabitha's journey remains extraordinary. She moved from an accounting office to a hardware shop, from a hardware shop to a beverage factory, from fortified wine into beer, from business into politics. But Keroche's story contains both achievements and warnings. It proves that locally owned African manufacturer can challenge powerful competitors. It also shows how growth can create depth, legal exposure, and cash flow pressure. The real question is not whether Keroche was a complete success or a failure. Business is rarely that simple. The bigger question is that the company changed. Keroche proved that Kenya's beer industry could be challenged by a local-owned manufacturer. It created jobs, developed brands, and started a national discussion about who should own African industries. Lesson number 1 is to start with the customer, which everyone else is ignoring. Keroche began serving customers who wanted more affordable, legally manufactured beverages. Do not ask only which business is already successful. Ask which customer is being ignored. You do not need to defeat the market leader everywhere. You just need to become valuable somehow. Number 2, your first product doesn't have to be your last product. The Karanjas did not begin with beer. They began with a fortified wine because it required less capital and allowed them to learn. Start with what you can execute properly. Generate revenue, build experience, then move towards the larger dream. Number 3, distribution is as important as the product. A great product hidden inside cannot build a business, cannot build a company. Customers must be able to find it and buy it easily. Before increasing production, ask who will distribute the product, where it will be sold, and how much delivery will cost. And number 4, compliance must grow with the business. The system used by a small company cannot safely manage a billion-shilling operation. As the business grows, accounting, tax planning, governance, and legal support must also improve. Compliance is not separate from business strategy. It is a part of survival. And lastly, number 5, build a company that can survive without you. A business that depends completely on its founder is not yet a strong institution. True systems means building systems, manager, and leadership capable of continuing after the founder leaves.